The months of September and October 2015 could be looked back on in years to come as the most tumultuous in generations. The Chinese economic meltdown is in full swing, and its impact on the rest of the world is painful. The economies of developing countries were the first to take the hit, and now stock markets in 23 different countries around the world are crashing. Now it's our turn, and it's going to be painful. The Dow Jones just lost 6% in a week, tumbling more than 1,000 points, the worst since 2008. Expect a short-term rally in response, but the long-term picture is potentially devastating. In fact, some indications show that the Dow has to drop to as low as 5,000 before it reaches the bottom. And even as investors resort to panic selling, some sectors of the establishment financial media are still peddling this delusion that we're in a bull market. Analysts are still bullish on Apple despite shares plummeting 20% from their all-time high. CNBC is encouraging people to pour more money into the stock market, claiming that the collapse is merely a dull year. Others are calling it a correction. When this kind of blind faith begins to take hold, you know that the bottom is about to drop out. This is exactly what we saw back in 2006. Remember this.
There is no tax increase coming in the next couple of years. Monetary policy is spectacular. We have freer trade than ever before. And not only that, but there are no incomes policies things here. I think Peter is just totally off base, and I don't think it's going to be, I just don't know where he's getting his stuff.
Well, one of us is off base, but it's definitely not me. It's not wealth that's increased in the last few years. We haven't increased our productive capacity. All that's increased is the paper values of our stocks and real estate. But that's not real wealth, no more than the NASDAQ was wealth. When you see the stock market come down and the real estate bubble burst, all that phony wealth is going to evaporate. And all that's going to be left is all the debt that we accumulated to foreigners.
Peter, I'm going to take a bet with you on this one. I'll bet you a penny on this one that if you'll sign a letter saying that if you're wrong, you'll sign a letter that you were wrong to me in this, but you're just way off base. There is nothing out there that tells us we're going to have a nice slowdown, but it's not going to be a crash.
All right, let me ask you this.
I'll bet you a lot more than a penny.
And just as they laughed at Peter Schiff back in 2006, those warning of a coming collapse have been mocked into silence, despite the fact that they're already being proven right. Oil prices, which signal true economic health, just suffered the longest streak of losses since 1986. Gold is soaring again as investors flee to safety. The crisis is truly global. The Chinese meltdown has wrecked emerging economies, with reduced demand causing currencies to plunge, setting the stage for what the AP predicts could be a crippling fall. But as Peter Schiff explains, the Chinese meltdown may be to blame for the latest downturn, but they're not telling you the whole story, which is that this stock market bubble was not based on a real economic recovery. It was based on the hot air of quantitative easing and artificially low interest rates. Once QE3 was tapered, stocks went sideways. And as soon as an interest rate rise was on the horizon, they tanked.
Because none of those gains were real. It wasn't because the economy improved, because we became more productive, because of a genuine increase in corporate earnings. It was all about Fed engineering. It was quantitative easing and 0% interest rates. Those were the two props that the Fed used to artificially prop up the market. They've already removed one, QE. That's why the market has gained no ground since the Fed ended QE. Right? All of the post-QE3 gains have been eradicated. The market has gone sideways since the Fed took away the first prop. But the markets have still been teetering on the second prop, which is 0% interest rates. But now everybody thinks the Fed's going to remove that prop. Well, then there's nothing beneath the market but a bunch of air, right? And the market is going to tank.
We're seeing a global currency war emerge as developing countries desperately try to make their exports more attractive by devaluing their currencies. September and October are really shaping up to be pivotal months. The zombie stock market has been artificially reanimated for the past 7 years with endless money printing. But the jig is up. QE has to end. Interest rates will have to rise. Vice senior analyst Larry Edelson predicts a global financial crisis of epic proportions beginning on October 7th. a ride like no generation has ever seen. The collapse is now so apparent that even big mainstream newspapers like The Telegraph are reporting, quote, central banks have lost control. Geopolitical tensions are also the most fraught they've been since the Cold War, with the Ukraine-Russia conflict set to reignite and talk of a contrived colour revolution in Moscow. The fears are also feeding into wider paranoia about other events in September that could bring catastrophe. Conspiracy theorists have seized upon September 23rd as a date on which a major earth-shattering event could take place. Some are even claiming that the timing of the collapse is biblical in nature, or that it could be seized upon to finalise plans for global government. That's how freaked out some people are about the next 2 months. That's all speculation, but the financial collapse is happening. It's here. It's now. So how's it going to affect you, and what can you do about it? Well, suffice to say, if you're still in stocks, then get out now. The usual safe havens of cash, gold, and bonds are king. Make sure you have a huge supply of physical money. Major banks could go bust. Capital controls could be imposed as they were in Greece. It's back to stuffing cash under the mattress. Storable food. And yes, I know it sounds a bit paranoid, but the US government itself has been stockpiling food for the past 4 years in preparation. If they're doing it, why shouldn't you? Worst case scenario, everything is fine and you just end up eating the food. It's an insurance policy. We also have to deal with the inevitability that America will be hit with more riots as a result of rising wealth inequality and the divisive Black Lives Matter race war movement. After falling for decades, we're seeing indications that crime is beginning to spike once again in major metropolitan areas. So invest in home security. Have a residency outside of a major city. Buy firearms. And yes, I know this sounds a bit fringe and a bit doomsday prepper, but just look at how the elite themselves are behaving right now. The wealthy are buying remote hideaways in places like New Zealand. They're buying safe rooms. They're fearing mass unrest. You don't normally get to become a billionaire without making good decisions. So if they're preparing for something, maybe you should be too. So buckle up and get ready, because it looks like September onwards is going to be one hell of a bumpy ride. Check out the other videos, subscribe to the channel. I'm Paul Joseph Watson for Infowars.com.